I am stoked. I'm stoked. I wanted you, Kevin, on the podcast for so long. You obviously know that, but you've been a little busy with Anna, becoming one of the best players in the nation and then committing to her dream school. There's so much that I want to break down with you today, Kevin, but just thank you for being on today.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
I told you we were at convention last week together, and I'm like, hey, we can sit down in a table and just record here, or we can schedule something out. And I think for both of us, there was so much going on. I had a crying baby half the time. You were going into meetings. We're like, okay, it's not happening at convention. How about we do this when like we're a little more chill and we can kind of debrief. But what was your take on convention? What were some of your takeaways this year as a coach?
Yeah, I mean, I always love the convention because I usually try to get so many takeaways from it, from just interacting with the coaches and from so many of the clinics and things. I think the major thing with the clinics for like me personally is just the interaction with the coaches. I mean, travel coaches as well, but also the college coaches, and to kind of just pull from them what I can. What are you doing that works? What have you seen that doesn't work? Just trying to pull as much as possible from them and try to be a sponge, to these coaches. And, on top of that, some of these clinics with obviously some of the best in the game, and just trying to take what we can from there to then utilize it with our team so that, hopefully our players are better prepared when they get to that next level. So,
Yeah, because you're like, they always say like high school, it's preparing you for college, but really travel ball is preparing you for college ball. So it's like both
right.
ways. But I love that you're trying to be a sponge because, the best players, they're sponges. They are trying to absorb as much as they possibly can so they can become the best that they can. But
Right.
as one of the premier travel coaches, I'm just going to label you that. Like, it's true, even though you're the most humble person I know. Like, to become one of the best travel ball coaches, I feel like you always have to be learning. You're never satisfied, like you have great things that are going on, but there's more and you're eager to learn more. So there weren't, a ton of travel ball coaches there, but
Right.
um I think the best ones are probably there due to the fact that they're just consistently learning. So sweet.
Yeah.
So when it comes down to like specific sessions, were there any that kind of stuck out to you?
I'm a big offensive person. So there was a couple of hitting clinics that I went to, that really I like to just hear the different philosophies, because it seems like every year there's something a little bit different out there. Somebody's getting into some different things like the motor preferences and things like that now. And just trying to take that away is something that we can bring back and utilize. And so some of those clinics that were, how the body moves and how it works. I love getting into those type of things. And and it's kind of like what you were just saying earlier, like with the you know the different things, different coaches, and trying to evolve over time with teams. I mean, for example, a position simple as, I say as simple as, a position like catching, it has
Hmm.
changed. I think catching styles have changed over the years, quite a few. I know, you know, with our catchers, I love working with the catchers and hitters and all that. I mean, I don't work with the pitchers because I got two coaches that are amazing with that.
Yes, you
So,
do.
doing the hitting, and so I focus on that, the fielding, the catching, that those type of things, and they do some of those as well. But just like you're saying, like with just the catching is one kind of in particular that has just evolved over time and has changed, and it may be different next year, maybe some different styles or something as well. So yeah.
True. Yeah, absolutely. And everybody kind of learns things differently and has their own thing. And I think that's what's kind of cool is I've talked to other, elite coaches and they're like, I'm not trying to like change your style. I'm just trying to introduce you like, hey, here's something new. You might like it. So
Right.
there's definitely something valuable about, just learning things, just different approaches. Cause I think a
Mhm.
lot of coaches, I used to be the same way when I first started. It was like, no, I'm one-sided. Like, this is how hitting works. This is how it's done. But at the end of the day, the longevity of hitting, I was a different hitter when I was 12 versus 24.
Right.
So it's
Exactly.
always changing and there's always different things that'll work different. And I'm 6 foot. So like what I do is not going to be the same as a 5 footer. So I think
Right.
that's cool that you look at the approach that way. So
Yeah.
you mentioned your two other coaches. So Brittany Pickett played with my sister Christina. She was all-star at UNC. And then Lauren Hager, I got to play with professionally and love those two to death. What stood out about them that made you want to have them on your staff?
Well, I mean, I think all their accolades and everything obviously kind of speak for themselves.
Totally.
But it's, my whole thing in the travel ball world is to try to I want to have former players around my players, and ones that have been there and done that and can speak to that. I mean, yeah, I'm a guy, so I get it. I know my place in the softball world. I was a baseball guy coming up. So, um, now granted, I try to learn as much as I can. I learn as much as I can from them as well. But I think the biggest thing is to try to get the females around the female athletes, and also ones that's been there and done that, because I can say some things, but a lot of times too, it'll be very different coming from them that has experienced it. And, obviously things can be experienced different by, them having played the game and done that firsthand. So I think that's a big thing that I want to bring to the players. And I think that's just very important. It's not to say that ones that haven't done it or the male coaches out there, there's nothing wrong with that. I'm just, that's just a thing that, I've personally tried to do, just because I think it's something more relatable for the players. And sometimes you can get a little bit more different feedback. There's different things I think you can get from that. Now, it's funny because I never expected players like that necessarily to come on board. Very fortunate, super fortunate, and they're amazing. And that's why when you said their names, I probably smiled really big. So
You did. You
um
did.
because it's actually, it's fun having them around. They're good people too. That's the other piece of it. They're just good people. And when you have that and they truly care about the kids, and it's not about a lot of other things that are out there. And it's about the kids and about the team, and again, trying to help them get best prepared for the next level, because you're in a college prep organization, that's what they're there for. And so that was the thing. And it's kind of funny, Lauren's story is pretty funny because she was in a facility, working in a facility here in Charlotte,
Mm-hmm.
and I was in there with my team one day, and it's actually in Kelsey Bruder's facility that and she played at Florida as well. And so Lauren's in there doing her thing with lessons, and we're in there practicing and hitting in the cages and stuff. And so I'm sitting there, I'm like, I'm just going to ask. And, one of my other coaches at the time was like, you seriously think she's going to do travel ball with, because I mean, let's be honest, travel ball gets some good reps and some bad reps sometimes. So,
Mm-hmm.
um, so I just asked her, and she was like, man, I love working with young people. I'd love to, kind of see what you got going on. I'd entertain it. I'm like, whoa, hold on a second. So then that's kind of how it went there. And with Brittany, she was coaching an organization, and then, she was going to school for nursing and things. So we were able to, you know, do some flexibility there with her schedule as well. And it just worked out like that. It's really, really a huge benefit to me and the team. So
Yeah. Call your shot. We'll see if she
yeah,
says
yeah,
yes. That's so cool that
yeah,
you probably thought she was gonna say no, and then you're surprised by the
right.
yes.
Yeah,
That's so neat. I think, when you also you make it about the team first and you don't make it about yourself, like it's very easy to kind of like commit to someone who's like, committed to learning themselves, but also committed to the team and not. And I think the way travel ball gets a bad rap, and I've seen it from all ends, is there are a lot of coaches with ego that are like, no, do this for me, instead of, no, like the goal is to get this kid to go to college at your level, like at your team, and whatever it's going to take, it's going to take. So if anybody
yeah,
knows it, you're right, are those two elite players. Now, I'm curious because there's a lot of coaches listening. How are you able to, manage your staff while you're the head honcho, but like give Brittany and Lauren like headway in their certain areas? Because I'm sure that's how, your team dynamic works. But how does it work specifically? What are the types of things you're teaching and doing? Are you leading practices? Are you doing what? And what are the other two doing?
yeah, yeah. So typically what I do, like for practices, I'm a practice person. So I love practices. I love the competition piece, don't get me wrong, and playing in tournaments and showcases and all that stuff, but I love the practice piece. And so I will typically, do all the practice planning and things like that. And then in the practices, a lot of times, Lauren and Brittany, they'll work bullpens, and I may be doing defense on the field. There's times where Lauren will be doing bullpen and working with the pitchers there. Brittany will be working outfield. I'll be working infield. And then, and so we'll do different things. Like then when we come into offense in the second half of our practices, a lot of times Brittany will throw live. So she'll get in there and she'll go live with them. I may be doing either talking to the hitters or working with them through some of those things. We'll have, different drills and stuff set up, and Lauren will be helping with those as well. But our practices, we do a lot of things in our practices. So, and I'll just be honest with you, everything we do in our practices is taken from college coaches. So I'm not scared to say that everything we do is what they do. And, so we take all that, and everybody's doing different things in practice. So I do the practice plan. I'll talk with them a little bit about practice plan and say, hey, are you comfortable working on this today? Are you good doing this? And they're yes. And they know we collaborate really well with that type of stuff. And, if we have to change on the fly, I'm an engineer by trade, so I'm very square. So I have to have a plan. I have to have everything mapped out. That's just my nature. And I think it helps them too, because they know, what we're doing is, everybody stays on track. But they do different things during the practice. I mean, Brady may be going live and Lauren watching the hitters, and I may be doing something else on a front toss or a machine somewhere. So yeah, we really do a breakdown. We're all doing kind of a mixed bag. So that's kind of how that works. On game days, typically kind of managing the game, when we rotate players or substitute players and things like that, I'm usually managing that. And they're more in the gameplay. Like if there's something happening on defense, if there's an error or something like that, and we need to correct something, I may go and work that, and say Lauren may go talk to a pitcher, or Brittany may go talk to a pitcher, or we're talking through with the hitters. One of us will be at third and one of us be at first, and then the other will be in the dugout talking to the hitters, getting them, hey, here's what we're seeing, things like that. So it's just a lot of different roles we all play, a lot of different hats. So
That's so great. Now, when you mentioned that, like, you take all of your practices from colleges, now you have all these coaches that are like, what the heck? What the heck were we supposed to be doing in our practices? What are the key elements of those practices? I'm sure you have like a specific structure you like to kind of stick to. So you don't
right.
have to share all of your secrets, and they're not secrets, they're
No,
just
it's
things
not secrets.
But
Yeah.
like, you could probably talk for 4 hours about this, but if you could break down, a proper practice, I think a lot of people would just eat that up.
Yeah. I mean, not gonna say it's the right way. But the way that seems to work for us is, we have, some pitchers that they're pitchers only, so they're POs. So we'll break down the pitchers and catchers, and they'll have a session. And while we're doing defense primarily, because a couple of our pitchers will hit sometimes. So during that portion, we'll have the pitchers and catchers go typically two at a time. We'll have, two sets. And so it may be Lauren's in the bullpen at that point, and then Brittany's running with the outfield session, and then I'm running with the infielders. And so we'll have a lot of drills surrounding all those things with the infielders and then the outfielders. And then, like I said, Lauren will be in the bullpen working with the pitchers. And then when we come back from that, we'll do certain rotations and everything through all those drills and that. But defense, we do that. Generally, we'll have long practices on Saturdays. And so a good portion of that practice will be the defense. And then what I would say the second half, whatever the time frame ends up for that, that's what we'll end up doing for offense. But we're very drill based. We do, like I said, we'll go live a little bit, but we're very drill based, very fundamental based type team. And again, if something's changing, it may be something that I've seen at a camp that I was at, or whether it's a convention thing, and come back and bring it back, and we implement some of those other things. And and a lot of times it may be different drills for different players. I think that's a lot of times what we get locked into is every player needs to do these drills, or you're doing you got 6 players in this group, they all need to be doing the same thing. I get in the travel practice and stuff, a lot of times you rotate them through all the drills, but we do enough different drills in there where it's hitting different elements. These first two drills may not, these first two kids may not need it as much as the other three, for example, but the next two drills they're doing will impact them more than say those, if that makes sense. So we just try to we try to implement that. Like a lot of times when we go to the offensive piece, Brittany's going live, then we'll do drills that work, that'll focus more on the top half, and then we'll do some drills bottom half, and then we'll do some drills that put it all together and then go live. Um so that's, and we, do the machine work, vertical pretty much with the machine and things like that. So that's kind of, yeah, I could talk all day about it. I love that stuff.
I know. And I don't think many people appreciate the practice as much. I mean, everybody wants the result in games, but
Yeah.
I heard this once, I don't know if you agree, but you almost have to make practices like harder than games so that the games feel a lot easier. Do you agree with that?
I do, and a lot of times we'll go really fast. Like
Yeah.
it'll get chaotic sometimes. There's a couple of things that we do with infield and outfield when we put them all together and go, that we go really fast. And and even a lot of times in our stations, and we're switching stations, we're going fast because I want to be very efficient with it, but also I want them to feel like everything in practice is rushed, so when they get in the games everything slows down. So
Mm,
that's that's kind of the mentality there. So trying to take a lot of that, and a lot of times they don't even know that's what it's doing. We're
right.
not trying to trick them, but at the end of the day, that's what it's doing. So
Absolutely. Yeah, you got to make it chaos. I remember, being at practice at Purdue. My first head coach that I had, it was like the 3 hours flew by because it was like you're going from this thing to this thing, this thing to this thing. I was also practicing in the outfield and infield. So when I was supposed to be getting
oh
break, I
wow,
didn't
yeah,
get a break. So
yeah,
at the end of the day, I've never been more physically sound, with my game defensively or offensively than when
mhm,
I was, being pushed in that way. Doing the drills, getting just the reps. I think
yeah,
the reps themselves, everybody's like, drills are great because I'm a drills person. We always do at least 2 or 3 drills in the cage when you're with me in a lesson.
mhm,
Um, so I love drills, but sometimes like when it comes down to team practice, the efficiency comes in the reps. Like
yes,
if your
yes,
defense is going to get good with their like I don't know, maybe you're working on transfers. You need to get your 10,000 reps to master anything.
right,
So you better make sure your practices are efficient. Like your
mhm,
defense are getting a lot of balls that day.
yeah,
Um, yeah, I think
and,
it's underlooked practice.
yeah, and I think too, in the practices, I think because there'll be times where they fail a lot, and and that's okay. That's what we got to figure out and work
Hmm.
through, right? So, there may be times where, we'll do these drills for a while, and then it gets to the point where I'm just like, okay, just make the play. Stop thinking about that drill base. A lot of it should have transferred because we did, these reps. Now just be an athlete.
Mm,
Um, because they laugh at me all the time because I'm like, when you get in a game, catch the ball with your teeth and throw her out. I don't care. Just being
make
kind
the
of silly
play.
with it, but
Yeah,
just
yep.
just make the play. And because you got all the tools. It's kind of like when you go in the batter's box and kind of the setup. I mean, a lot of times we're thinking about it. You're in the dugout and you're preparing there, in a certain way. Then for us, when we get in the batter's box, we're doing certain things to prepare there. And then when you get in the box, you're kind of going with what you got at that point. And
Exactly.
and I think, where I grew very young in this, and I did baseball for I guess around 10 years, and I've been in softball for a lot of years now. But early on, I would want to try to tell the batter a lot when I was on, say, coaching third base. And, maybe it was a mechanic thing or two. And I'll never forget, in talking to some college coaches, they were like, hey, at that point, you're gonna get them processing too much, and then there's gonna be too much for them. And so now it's like you get in there, maybe every now and then there may be something we kind of point out just to, but it's not, don't want them thinking about too much when they get in the box other than what they prepared for as they got to the box. So we try to be careful with that too.
Yeah, well said. I mean, I was the same way. Like early on as a coach, I was like, yeah, I mean, they need to know. And many people that, maybe are new to the coaching game, maybe this is their first year, second year coaching their kids, and they're like, oh yeah, I'm telling them all these mechanics. Truly, that's gonna build scrambled eggs. That's what Sue Enquist calls it, like up in the
Yeah.
brain. Scrambled
Yeah.
eggs. Like We don't need scrambled eggs. We need just one clear focus, and that's the ball, right? Because
Yeah,
we lose focus. Like I always say, the more things I'm thinking about, the blurrier the ball gets.
exactly. Yeah.
So, how do you then have your athlete be able to transfer maybe that practice to the game? Like, how do you emphasize, hey, let go of the mechanics that we focused on? Like, you did the mechanics, you did the reps, now we can trust it. How do you get your players to do that?
So I think there's a couple of things that come into play with that. For example, like I mentioned earlier, a lot of them talk about, say a lot of them, a lot of people talk about failing. And by the time we get in the game, I'm like, we're going with what we got right now. Yes, we can tweak things in game, all that stuff, and we can talk about strategy and all that stuff. That's different. But when you get there and again, just make the plays, and just do whatever you have to be an athlete. Because at the end of the day, if you're playing, in travel and, some of the levels we play and things like that, like you're an athlete, you can play. So there's a reason you're here and go play. And, I think too, like going back to the failure piece, I think what sometimes we miss is when a player fails at something and they're taken immediately out of the game, for example. Let's be honest, there's some coaches out there that do that, and it may be effective for the players, it may not be. We haven't found it very effective. We haven't really tried that too much, but from what we've seen. But if you're also teaching the recovery piece, that's where I think if players trust the coaches enough to know, hey, if we make a mistake or if we strike out, we're not coming straight out of a game. If we walk a batter, if we hit a batter, okay, coaches trust us. They're going to give us a little leeway to work through this, and that way we can actually figure out what recovery is. Because I think that's a big thing missing in travel ball. Honestly, we all want to win. Don't get me wrong, we all want to win, but at the end of the day, the mental aspect's a huge thing in softball and in all sports. But trying to understand, when you fail, you do have opportunities to make up for that. And I think that gets missed a lot. So I think that's a part of why I feel like we do a pretty good job um, of letting these players try to recover. Now, again, if they're in a game and there's a couple of things that go on and you can just tell their heads out of it and they're just, it's just something's just not right. That may be a time, hey, come on, sit, let's talk through it, let's figure this thing out. And then
Mhm.
it may be next game, it may be next couple innings. But unless we're teaching, we're seems like everybody talks about failure recovery. And if you're doing it, that's fantastic. But if you're talking failure recovery and you're really not doing it, I think and I found that I think there's more of that going on than what some people even realize sometimes because you get so caught up in the games and stuff. So um, I just think that's a big piece of it for the players. I think that helps the mental piece to know that you got trust with your coaches, and just to be able to know you can make up for it. I mean, we've had players come on board before, and for example, we may have had a pitcher come on in the past, and my goodness, usually if I'd have done this in the past, I may not still be in the game. And Lauren and Brittany will talk to them and say, "Hey, no, we got to figure this out because if you're going to go play, you're going to go pitch at that next level, regardless of what level it is, you got to be able to work through some stuff." And we try to help them with that as much as possible. I'm not saying we're perfect and we do everything right, but I think that's just some things that's worked for us. And I think this helps some of the players and that type of thing. And I think that's the other thing too that, with Lauren and Brittany, it'd be hard for me to do it without them. Very, very hard. Because I think we all from that standpoint have the same mindset as far as trying to help these kids, help them figure it out. Because I mean, at this age, they got enough going on with life. So, and a lot of things to figure out. So, trying to help them with those things. Yeah.
This is such valuable insight. I'm sure, coaches right now are literally taking notes. They're like, these are all things we're going to start implementing. And like, you got to try things like some of these. And that's the thing. Some of these things are going to work for teams. Some might not, like you said,
Yep.
but I think this is just providing so much value. I'm so happy we're here. Can we kind of shift over to your daughter because she's
Sure.
your pride and joy. You love her so much. Congratulations. She just committed to her dream school, FSU. How does it feel? Proud dad?
Very, very proud. Yeah, it's pretty exciting. And, she worked so hard for so many years. And, it's like we talk about the work just gets harder, right? So, I'm like, hey, go play at that level. You can't, no slowing down and keep on going. And that's not, who she is. She wants to keep going and 100 miles an hour with it. So yeah, it is exciting though. It really is.
Yeah. When did you learn that like college was what she wanted? Did she tell you that straight up? Like how did that work?
So I think early on, because when we started in Team NC, quite a few years ago, I mean, it's a college prep organization, so that was kind of the intent of the team when we built it. The thing is, when we started it, I was planning on starting it. The team and the players I had was going to be in her age group. Well, at that time, 10s and 12s, you want to spend a lot of time practicing and fundamentals and that type of stuff. And so you want more of a local base, or at least that's what we were trying to achieve. With our local base, we didn't really have many that wanted to do that level or seemed to go in that direction at that age. So, but what I found is the ones that did were a couple years older. So, um, we had to have conversations. Myself and my wife and Anna had to say, "Hey, is this what you want to do? Do you want to play up a couple years on this team? Know that what you got to do to play with your players 2 years older and things like that." And she's like, I'm in. I want to do
Hmm.
it. And so it was kind of, honestly, it's hard to see obviously at that age, but that mentality I think is like, all right, she's got that kind of mentality. Like,
Hmm.
you play board games with a kid, oh my goodness, like it's like everything's a competition. So
Yeah.
um,
Welcome to my
but
house.
yeah, so so I think early on we kind of saw that was probably the direction she was heading. And so yeah, so that's kind of, and wanting to play up in those situations versus you know I want to stay back. Like, it was never even a question really. And just kind of explaining like what she would have to do to be able to maintain and uh to do those type of things and to excel in the older age groups. And yeah, she was willing to do that, wanting to do that, and it kind of just took off. Yeah, and I think too, I think if you love something and you really enjoy it, maybe she didn't love it at that time, maybe not even know that she did, but really enjoy playing the game, then that stuff will come. And I think, not to go on a little tangent, but I think, some people talk about burnout and stuff. I know that can be a sensitive topic with some people, but
Yeah.
for us and as a family, we feel like, you know, if you love doing what you're doing, you're going to do it. Um, if you don't really love it and you're still doing it and it's hard to do it and you don't really want to, I mean, I know there's going to be some hard things you work through and things like that, but I think, I don't know, I think a little bit differently about burnout than some folks, because I think, if you love it, you're going to do it, and maybe do it
Right.
a whole lot, you know.
Yeah. So I was about to ask, like, how do you become one of the best players in the nation? But it sounds like that's probably the foundation. It's she
Yeah.
loved it, and kind of like you when it comes to coaching, you're just a sponge. You want to keep absorbing ways to get better. Has that been Anna since that moment of wanting to play up?
Yeah, yeah. It's been, it's just funny. Come home from work and it's like, hey, we heading out to the field today? Yeah, we'll go. Because I said I will never say no. If you're asking and you want to go, I will never ever say no. And
Mm,
so we're literally at the field and have been most days, most of the time, every day, for a very, very long time. And so, you know, does things as far as, workouts with her trainer that she's done for years, and, you know, um, just different things with, doing mental training and stuff like that with others. And um, so pretty much preparing and doing everything you would need to do to kind of get set up for that next level. And it's never been something where I said, you have to do this. And, because me and her mom are just like, if you want to do it, then, you can ask us to do it and things like that. And, but we're not going to sit there and push you. And so, yeah, so we just kind of uh, let her drive it. Yeah.
good stuff. Sorry, I keep coughing in the background. It's fun being sick and recording a podcast.
Oh, goodness.
We're all good. I just have a coughing attack. Where am I?
Gotcha.
Hang on. One second.
Yeah.
All is good. All is good.
All right.
I'm just gonna sip some water. We'll be good.
Yeah.
Hmm. I love that you let her be the driver of her own bus. I think that's the key of all of it. You're not going to be the best in the nation. You're going to burn out before you get there if you if you don't love it. So, I mean, I
Right.
found a lot of people that I played in college with. I came in with 8 people and only 4 finished their careers. So, it's not just about doing it to get a scholarship. It's doing it because you love it and you want to see how far you can take it. I think that's where
Right.
you find your extent.
Hmm.
I'm so sorry.
No, you're fine.
So bad. It is like dripping down my throat.
Oh gosh.
This is the best part about podcasts. You can edit all of it.
There you go. There, yeah, yeah.
One second, I'm gonna blow my nose and hopefully that
Yeah, you're
helps a
good.
little. Can you hear me coughing or did you hear that
Mm-mm.
when I muted? Okay.
No, no.
My editor's gonna have a blast going through this later. Woo! Oh my gosh. Um, okay. This is one question that I needed to ask about Anna is there's a lot of players that want to make it and they want it, just like Anna did. Um, but the recruiting process can feel brutal. It can feel like this never-ending cycle and people dread it, but I think the recruiting process is kind of a fun time too. And I feel like it can be a little bit of both. You're allowed to be stressed, but how did you guys experience the recruiting process? Was it scary? Was it fun? What's your take on that?
Yeah, so I think for us and as a family and for Anna, um, it was a it was a fun process, but it was also a lot. And I think working up to it, obviously she did a lot of camps and a lot of emails and a lot of all the stuff that we do from a recruiting standpoint as a team and for her as a player. And so, there was a lot of that stuff going on. And then, obviously as we're coming up to September 1, and for her, I tell people, like, I always ask her, say, hey, what's your list look like? And I'll even tell some, the college coaches when we were talking, I was like, she's got her list of schools, but a lot of people talk about ranking the schools and all that stuff on your list and things. And it was funny because she didn't kind of quote unquote rank them. And I mentioned something to her one time about it. She goes, well, I'm not sure if they're going to call for one, or reach out, so then after that, then I can, think about it more. And then there may be some that pop up that didn't, realize they would. So you got that kind of that piece of it. And then you never know how the conversations are going to go either. You know, may click with some people, may not. And so I think for her, I think she did a good job of working the process. Yes, she didn't go on as, the other visits and things like that. And when you have your when moment, and she had that. And I think the process was fun, but it was a lot. It was a lot. And you know, but it was a good thing because I think she worked the process in different ways too. So I think it was good. Yeah.
I'm so proud of her for not ranking them due to the fact that she's given everybody a chance. I think so many athletes are one-sided. They're like, no, I want to go here. And they don't know exactly why. They just want to wear that jersey. But
Hmm.
like, shout out to her for like experiencing all of it, taking
Yeah.
it all in and being able to sit there and, make that decision based on what she wants. Did she go through like a list of values or is she just,
Hmm.
um, or is that something that, you just guys you instill in your family already? It's like, no, I want the program that's going to feel the most like family. Is that kind of how she
Right.
approached it?
Right. And that's the thing. We talk about it a lot, and talked about the process a lot, and as a family. And and hoping that everything was instilled in her, to from that aspect of, what she's looking for, and just went through all that kind of process through, what everybody talks about with recruiting, big school, small school, coaching staff styles and makeup and all of that, those things that go along with it. So I think, she did a really good job of going through that. I think we as a family talked about that a good bit. Um, you know, did we feel good about some of the ones that were on a like it was not necessarily about ranking them, but like, man, I think, you know, these schools would be a really good, make a lot of sense and be
Mhm.
a really great fit. We did. Now we tried not to impress that upon Anna because we wanted her to have her journey, right?
Yeah.
So, um, and that, you know, and then, her choosing to go to Florida State with, that school, that staff. Oh my gosh, I can't,
Mm.
say enough. But
Yeah. They're good
but yeah, I
people.
mean that's kind of how that evolved. And, you know, and everybody's path's different. I mean, it is, and how they approach it and different things. And gone through that for a few years now with the, players on my team and things like that. Because I love the recruiting process in general. Um, as far as the relationships with the coaches and working through that and trying to help the families through that process and things. And I think, you know, from that aspect, the one thing I don't say that gets maybe lost in the recruiting process some is just to make sure, like from a coaching standpoint and travel coaching standpoint, it's all about relationships, right? That's what I was talking about the the NFCA at the beginning,
Yeah.
meeting with the coaches and talking with the coaches. There's a lot of times I don't even talk to the coaches about softball. I
Mhm.
mean, we're talking about whether it's family or something they did recently or something we did recently. And a lot of times, now, does it get to softball at some point? A lot of times it does, but it may not be, hey, I need you to look at Susie because she's really good. You know,
Right.
it, and I think, understanding the relationship piece of it is a big deal. And I think, versus just softball and look at Susie because you need to recruit Susie. Well, you may not know what that school needs and things, but yeah. So just, you know, I like that whole process with the recruiting and the relationships and trying to help these families and players find the right home and things. It's just, I don't know, it's pretty rewarding and pretty fun to do.
Yeah, and I think that's something for, a college prep organization as yourself. There's a lot of coaches out there that, maybe they have a kid. Maybe it's just one kid. Maybe it's the whole gamut of kids on their team they want to play in college. You're right. Like you have to have that advocate for yourself. That, that person that can speak on your behalf when maybe it's not September 1st and they can't talk to you yet. Um
Right.
That's huge, and I'm learning from you because it's crazy. In January 1st, we're recording this in December, I'm launching, more of that recruiting process for athletes that I work with myself because I have great relationships with certain coaches as well, and I wanna be able to provide as much as I can, for the coaches on their behalf. But I think one thing that I wanna learn from you personally is, you know, obviously you have to sell your kid. That sounds kind of sketchy, but you kind of have to like sell the kid based on who they are. But at the end of the day, you can't fluff it either. You can't lie to him and say, "Hey, this kid works out 7 days a week, but she really only works out one."
That's right.
Like how are you able to, you know, put that kid on a coach's map that you have a relationship with? I'm
Yeah.
curious.
Yeah. You hit the nail on the head. It's being transparent and honest with these coaches. Because I tell coaches all the time, if they're asking, hey, what can this player do? And I will be very, very honest with them about it. I'll never hurt a kid, not by any means, but I'll be very honest with the coach about it because at the end of the day, if I lose the trust of this particular coach, they're never going to want to recruit any of my kids anymore or even talk to me about any of the kids
Yeah.
because they're like, oh, you said she throws 85, you know,
She
and
throws 61. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I mean, it's those type of things where, or if you go up and just say, hey, this kid can play for you, just kind of what I mentioned before. If you as a coach don't know what that college coach actually needs, because that's a lot of times first thing I'll ask them a lot of times when we're talking to recruiting and a player is, what are your needs? And they may
Mhm.
say, I need a catcher. Well, I'm like, well, Susie doesn't catch, so she probably wouldn't. be able to help you out, and being honest about their abilities and about what kind of person they are, family, all that stuff, because all of it goes into it, right? So
Totally.
I think you just have to be transparent and honest. And I think at that point, and then the coaches can trust you and know if you say this kid can run a whatever to first base and her overhand is this or whatever it is, or she can play three different positions. Well, can she really? Can she really
Yeah.
pitch, hit, play the field? And that type of thing. So I think just the straight up honesty with the coaches and having them be able to trust you with it.
Mhm.
That's a big thing. Yeah.
Does it ever catch you off guard when you're like, "Oh, Lonnie Alameda's calling," or like just
It,
getting
it
these
does.
calls from these coaches?
It does. Yes, it still does. And, a lot of them I talk to, quite often, because obviously in the recruiting process and the age of our kids and some of the abilities of our kids. And so it does. It's funny because there was a time we were traveling, one time, and it was our family in the car, and Lauren was in the car with us as well. And we're going somewhere, and then, a very prominent coach popped up on was calling. They were like, Lauren was even like, how do you know her? Like, because we didn't have a kid go there or anything, and they were on the West Coast. So, I was like, well, no, it's just a relationship. I said, because every now and then, not very often, but every now and then I'll call and just, you know, we took one thing from the way of the running style when we
Mhm.
implement it with our team. So, that's kind of how we got connected, and I was asking questions about it. So, that's just kind of how the relationship started there. But yeah, it's again all about relationships and having people to be able to they can trust you and feel they can trust you. And then I
Mhm.
think it's a trickle down to your team, right? So with the parents of the players and the players themselves, again, I think I've taught trust. I don't know how many times in this, but you got to have that. And I think it all, goes back to transparency and honesty with folks.
That's so funny. I was just about to talk about your team and how you've been able to build this repertoire of like a very elite athletes, very good, like, but not much turnover either for your
No,
teams. Like
no.
you don't see that in travel ball. There's always this crazy turnover. Why is it that you don't have much turnover, do you think?
Yeah. Um, so we actually just confirmed all our players are coming back for us to us in the summer, which in travel ball is unusual, um, in general. And I mean, I'm sure there's others out there that have everybody come back and things, but um, it's again, I think it's just what I was just saying about the transparency piece. So for the players, kind of getting to the player piece of it is, for example, pitchers and catchers super super transparent about a lot of stuff, like to give them a plan for the games and things like that, still do it with the others as well, but especially with the pitching staff and catching staff, because we do have multiple of those, and the way we work those may be different than other teams, but um we're very transparent. Like I'll say, hey, you're getting the start of this game, we're gonna let you go, as long as you can go. And then we'll tell the other you're in relief this game. And if that works out, then, you know, the other player, you're starting this game. And so we try to do our very best into um, letting them know what the plan is. And same thing for the catchers, because we have multiple catchers and a couple play, other positions as well. So we try to let them know, whether we don't have to, but I feel like it's the right thing to do. So we don't have somebody sitting there like, oh my gosh, when am I going to play? What's going to
Yeah.
happen?
You don't want the
Things like that.
limbo. Yeah.
Yeah. And, we may have certain rotations in the field. Um, and I'll make sure the players understand what the rotations look like, and what, if there's any reasoning, like, hey, you're not going to play this game because you're going to play the entire next game. We just try to be transparent about that stuff. Now, does it all work out that exact way? No, but if it doesn't, because like our pitchers, like we try to rotate sometimes, and then there's other times where if a pitcher needs to work on something and she's doing, working through something, or she's doing very well and just kind of needs that game, you know, and a lot of times Lauren say we're going to let her keep going. And I hear some from college coaches, not won't say all of them say this, but I think there's quite a few that says, man, stop throwing these kids every 2 innings. We want to see them get through a lineup. maybe more than once. And so, we try to do that. And again, too, like if a college coach, if either they're recruited and their coach is there or they're being recruited, we make sure to put them in the right positions to either be seen or so that their coach can, see them do their thing out there. So I think it all goes back to the transparency and for the parents to understand what we're doing as well. Because again, I know a lot say don't want to deal with parents, don't want to do this or that. I understand that, but I think there's now most of the time we're going through the players anyway, but we know exactly what's going to happen. They'll go get in the car with their parents, and mom or dad may say, "Well, hey, what happened here? Why didn't you pitch these last two innings? Why didn't you play, an infield position for the last two innings?" Something like, "Oh, coach told me we were doing this. This was the plan." And you don't have to tell them everything, but I think
Right.
there's a lot there that goes a long ways in making them understand what you're doing. And two, there's some strategy in some of the stuff we do, and I think that can help them too at the next level to understand what's going on. So
Mhm.
it's
No,
just, I think
it's
that's how we've
so good.
done that. But I also think too, the having Lauren and Brittany on staff that can relate to them, non-parent coaches, things like that. I think that's a big deal. I know I'm a parent and I have a kid on the team, but a lot of times it has turned like, hey, Lauren, Brittany, what do you think? And they help with that piece of it. So
Mhm.
um, so I think that's a big part of it too.
Yeah, Lauren had mentioned when she came on my podcast not too long ago about, parents and how, like you were saying, like there's a lot, it's always like coaches versus parents. And at the end of the day, like the coach, the parent, the player, you're all a team. Like these coaches that are recruiting these athletes, like are also recruiting the family. Like I feel like you've kind of taken that similar approach. It's like, no, like we're all a team here. And you don't have to agree with my decision making all the time. But the fact that you bring clarity is so good. Lauren was mentioning that you guys had like specific standards that like from like a parent player perspective, if these standards aren't met, like we may ask you to
Mhm.
leave. I kind of
Right.
like that as well. And it's not like a
Yeah.
list of 40 million things, but it's like
Right.
there are standards. Do you mind sharing with us like some of those standards that like you don't mess with?
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, and I'll first start with we've been super fortunate. We have
yeah.
a great set of families, and I'm not just saying that, we really do. And so like drama and stuff is like is almost non-existent,
Hmm.
and which is rare too, because again, a lot of different personalities, a lot of different stuff going on. Um, but I think everybody understands the intent of what we're trying to do and the trust factor and transparency. But the thing is, like, again, the kind of the standards you're talking to, like for example, after a tournament or showcase, we won't discuss anything. It's got to be at least 24 hours before we'll talk about any. I mean, if it's something else they want to call it, but if it's something they're like wanting to call and question something or things like that, giving them a little bit of time to think about it, you know, and hopefully that either settles down or whatever the case may be. But we got the a 24-hour rule there. Um, we've got it where parents aren't to do like not to come in the dugout, not to hand their players anything from outside the dugout. They're old enough now to do their own thing. um so we have things like that in place. You know if you ever go to one of our games, our parents, they're super supportive, but you'll very rarely ever hear anything to an umpire or players or anything, and I think that's what it should be. Rare sometimes,
So
but
rare. So
but
rare.
they also know too, because I've only had to do it a couple of times over a lot of years, is where I've had to ask a player to leave. And I think one of the things that, um, if there's an issue, we ask the parents to come to me with the issue. That's one thing that I've told Lauren and Brittany, when they came on board, is like, I'll handle all that stuff. I need you there for the kids and the coach. I don't need you to deal with any of that stuff if it ever comes up. Fortunate that it hardly ever comes up, but um, but if an issue does come up, we always ask to come to the head coach, and we'll talk about it and work through it. So there's been only a couple of times where I've had a situation where I've had to let a kid go. Um, I'll never forget, there was a situation where I had to let a kid go because a parent crossed the line on something, went to another parent and started kind of like starting spreading some stuff. And I know
Sure.
that can happen in travel, and probably more so, well, different age groups, but this was a while back, and so I had to, call that parent and say, "Hey, I found out this was going on. I've got to let your kid go." And the parent was not happy, and it got, you know, was not happy at all. And I said, "But this is what we agreed to when you came on board, and that type of thing." And so it took them a few minutes. They understood it. Um, I'll, I'll tell you this: years later, I was helping the kid with recruiting.
Mm,
So because it was like, the dad's like, why are we punishing the kid for this? I'm like, well, it's it was
you
in the
set the
agreements in our
standard.
standards.
Yep.
I've got to hold to that because if I don't, then everything's going to get crazy.
Yes,
Um,
you have to instill your standards or people are just going to walk all over them.
yeah,
So
and
good.
so that's the other piece is if you've got them and you say, "Ah, all right, we'll do better next time," then somebody else does. It's just a trickle down effect,
Hmm.
and you know me well enough. That's not stuff I like to do. I don't like conflict or any of that type of thing. So it's very, very hard to do those type of things. And I felt so bad for the kid. I felt horrible. And but at the end of the day, we're still talking today. Actually, I found out that a parent that something like that had happened to, they had actually recommended a player to come to our team.
Wow.
So last year, so I think there's things within it that people understand it's not about getting anybody or going after anybody. There's just things we've got to do and we've got to stand by. And if you do, then I think it works out where most of your players come back and things. So yeah, it's tough sometimes, but it works out in the long run usually. Yeah.
Mm, for sure. Man, we've never gone here on the podcast, but
No.
I'm so glad. I'm so glad we did. I think, everything from, picking the right staff to making sure you're running an effective practice to talking about how your daughter went through recruiting. I feel like we just dabbled, even though we were here for an hour. I feel like we just dabbled into these subjects. But it's such a good starting point, for a coach who's maybe looking to set higher standards for their team and get rid of drama because I know you say you're like fortunate that you don't have drama, but like you have set the standards to make sure drama is minimal. And so just shout out to you for everything that you're doing. I'm just so glad that we could finally get together and kind of chat, how things are running over there because at the end of the day, again, I already said it before, but you are, very humble in your actions and what you do, but you're very, very good at what you do.
I appreciate it.
You are building champions. You are truly helping them be prepared for college, which from a college prep organization, that's what you're supposed to do. So I think I just appreciate you so much for coming on. Is there any other thing, maybe you'd want to share with a parent or coach? um, in regards to, your perspective of the game that, maybe you wish they, might need to know before we sign off.
Um, I think we touched on a lot. I think I go back to the failure recovery thing a
Hmm.
lot because I think it ties into everything to the mental health stuff. Obviously there's more outside of that. I get it. But I think allowing them to fail, but truly allowing them to try to recover too. I
Yeah.
think that's because we talk about the failure piece, which at the end of the day, those are opportunities, right? So, but the thing is helping them to understand that recovery piece versus, because that's the first thing again, going sideways really quickly is not allowing them to recover or not working through some stuff or things like that. But outside of that, I think just the transparency piece. I think there's a fine line with transparency. Like
Hmm.
I said, you don't have to tell them everything that you're doing, but I think there's a point to where you can get to with that transparency, so the players and parents and everybody understand. But again, it all goes back to having the support and being surrounded by the right people. And that's why I
Hmm.
tell my players when they go on. I tell my high school because I coach high school as well. So I tell them when they graduate and things, just make sure you're surrounding yourself with the right people.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, that's gonna be what molds you and keeps you grounded or gets you going sideways or something like that. So I think it's who you're surrounded by and look who you're going to surround these kids by from in the recruiting process and everything too with their coaches and stuff. So yeah.
So well said. The best teams I ever coached, or sorry, the best teams I ever played on, the best coaches I ever had, all of those things were instilled. And I truly, when you're a player who feels like you are loved by the people that lead you and you have respect for those people, you're going to play your best. So I think all in all, the whole pie has been eaten. Like we've eaten, like we've talked about the whole pieces of the whole pie. I'm gonna call it a pumpkin pie. I don't know. I love good
There
pumpkin
you
pie. But
go.
this has been a pure joy, Kevin. Thank you so much. And I hope you enjoy the holidays with your family. And thanks for spending time with us on the podcast.
Well, thank you for the opportunity, and hope you all have wonderful holidays, and